Alright, hey guys, name Mrozinski with Mrozinski Farms, and I'm going to walk you through one of our planters. We run two 40-foot planters on our farm. We have a 16-row corn planter, and then we have this planter. It's a 16/32. So what that means is we are 16 rows, but in between is another set for a tighter row spacing of soybeans. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through from the top to the bottom how the planter works. And every season we bring it in and we check for normal wear points, because this planter is an 04, so it's 16 years old and things wear out. But to get started on our soybean planter, these big tanks, they hold 50 bushel of soybeans. So when we buy our seed, they come in big boxes. We put a box in each one, and there's separate tubes that go to each row. So you're gonna see there's a tube here and a tube here. One is blowing and one is sucking, okay? So you open this up, there's 32 rows. Each one of these hoses is blowing seed into these little housings. And the other hose is a vacuum hose, which I'll go over here. There's two. Those big round black things are vacuums, and they're sucking. So I'm going to show you the reason for this. The way a planter works is you put the disc in, you lock it in, and it locks in. So as you're filling this hopper with seed, the vacuum is sucking the seed to these holes, and as it's rotating, it's dropping seeds. So that brings me to the drive cable, which turns this. But as it's dropping seed, you can see how these are mounted down here. It drops it down a seed tube. So I'll start here, and so we check our seed tubes for wear, because as you can see, here's a brand new one, and you can see how they get really thin. The other thing that happens is they wear out in the back, and you get a bump right there. And so what that's going to do is that's going to affect your seed placement, because you're wanting to drop a seed every inch, and if you get any little discrepancy, it's going to mess with your population. So that's what we do. And when we have monitors in our cabs, they read populations. So on this seed tube, this is what we call a seed sensor. These little eyes right here, they're reading pulses as the soybeans go through the seed tube. And so as we go through these, go that, do that, and so you put another one on there, and this locks down in there. And then I'll mount my housing, like all these other 32, and I'll go through the rest of my planter. I'm gonna take it back, and I'm gonna show you. Okay. So we're back here. Once again, this is the tube that's filling it. This is the tube that's sucking the seed. You can see the side. As it's dropping the seed down, it's coming out of this tube, and it's gonna, your soil's right here. So what we have, this is a seed disc opener. I have it cut off so you can see the side. And what these do, they're on a slight angle, and they make a V trench in the ground. And so when you get these, they're brand new at 15 inches. We put these on brand new last year, so I know we can get 2 years. We'll measure the diameter to make sure they're not wore out, so they make a proper V. So we take these off, we check for these. These are seed tube guards. They protect the seed tube for premature wear like you saw on those other ones, because what can happen is, over time, they get narrow like that, and they don't do their job of protecting the tube, and then that wears out. This is a seed firmer. So like I said, we're making a V trench, and as you're dropping the seed in the trench, this firmer is securely placing the seed down in the trench so there's no gaps of air. So we check the tension on that, check this, and we measure these. And as I put these on, there's these little shims. And what these do is they space the openers, because as you put these on, there's a requirement of the correct spacing. And so I'll go down here and show you what I have put together. I take business cards, and when you put 2 business cards in, and as you slide them together, you want 1.5 to 2 inches of space. So right here I'm at 1 3/4 inches. I'll spin it a few times, just check. That one looks pretty good. And so that ensures that I'm gonna have a perfect V trench, because if there's a gap and I can pull this card all the way through, I'm not gonna have a good trench for my seed. And if I have it shimmed too tight, I will get premature bearing failure and I can crack this hub. So every year we just tear it all apart, we start over. When I get them on, I put these little things on. These are scrapers. As you can see, all our gauge wheels are full of mud from last year's wet spring, and they just keep the mud off of these. So that's the seed disc opener. In the front of these, you'll see this no-till coulter. All this does is kind of break up the soil, so as we're planting, the soil is loose, and it kind of breaks up the corn stalk. We'll just go in here and check the bearings. Like I said, last year these were brand new, so they should be good. Another thing we check are these tails for the closing system. You can see I replaced all 32 of these because they get a wobble in them like that, and you want these closing wheels to fall right on top of your trench to get a good close. And so if you're traveling 5-6 miles through the field, it's gonna keep rattling. You don't want that. So I went through, I changed all of them. They're pretty tight now. When you're going through them, you want to check the bearings. Spin them, make sure they're tight. That's not good. So I can take it off, I can change the bearing, or I can put a replacement on. You want to check all your bearings also. Your tail. This spring is just for down pressure, depending on the conditions when you're planting. That's what that's for. After we get our seed disc openers put back together, we'll put these gauge wheels on. And you'll see there's this little rocker right here, because that is what adjusts your depth. So you put these gauge wheels on. So what I do is I tighten them up, and this little screw right here, I can adjust. When I get them all cleaned up, I want this gauge wheel to run just flush with my seed disc opener. That ensures that I'm not gonna get any loose dirt down into my furrow, but at the same time, these 2 arms push against this turnbuckle right here, and that's what controls how deep or how shallow you put your seed in the ground. You see these airbags right here? So we have an onboard air compressor, and this applies down pressure to the actual row unit, depending on the type of soil, how hard, how soft, wet or dry. Sometimes we can crank up the PSI, sometimes we don't need much at all. So that's that. Some planters have transmissions. This one has a hydraulic drive. So it has one on that side and one on this side. And what that does is I just have little hoses that plug in my tractor, and I can type in my population in my computer, and it will plant what I want. If I am planting through the field and I and I get in a good spot, I can crank up the population, or if I get on a high sand hill, I can down the population. But there are sensors on here, so when I pick the planter up, it shuts off automatically, and when I set it down, it turns back on automatically. Trying to think of the... So, once again, from top to bottom, we put the seed in the big CCS container. It blows the seed to each row, and we have 32 of these. As it's blowing the seed, I have 2 vacuums, and it uses the vacuum to suck the seed to the plate, and then in turn, this cable is turning the meter, and that's dropping it to the seed tube. Dropping it to the seed tube. It's pressing it in the dirt, and these little guys right here are closing it up, and we're done. So that's why we go through all this work in the months ahead of time, because when it's go time, we want everything to work. We got to go through 32 rows, how many bushings, how many pieces of metal, how many pieces of plastic, so this takes time. But we got a shop, so we do it now. I've got my corn planter done, I'm working on the bean planter, and I just have to keep things coming in and out of the shop. But it's preventative maintenance, and it helps us so we're not down, especially in a wet spring like last year. So that's our planter checklist in a nutshell.